Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about the week starting on Monday, June the 30th, 2025. I also want to look at the horoscope of Jeff Bezos and his recent marriage in Venice. And I have no idea why anyone would want to go to Venice. I have been to Venice. I think I've been to Venice twice, and really, it's a place I can't stand. And I went there in my teens, I think, and I had this feeling of incredible decay of a city that is just falling apart. Maybe I just find the fact that you've got canals and buildings right next to each other, and you can see that decay. You can see the water just getting ready to just overwhelm this city, and perhaps it reminds us of the inevitability of death. We're trying to keep the ocean at bay, but in the end, it's impossible. And I don't know why you would want to have a city like this. And I find the whole experience of Venice incredibly depressing. And the first time I went to Venice was when I was 4. It was the summer of 1966. And I was there with my parents. And I think there was no pair girl. Some teenage girl had come along to help look after me. Did I need that much help? I don't know. Was I that bad? Probably. And my parents wanted to look at a glass shop. Venice is full of glass shops. At least it was in 1966, selling all these things like, I don't know, glass flamingos, glasses, glass ashtrays, things done with glass. And I don't find that especially impressive, but my parents wanted to look, and I got bored, and I wandered off. So I got lost in Venice at the age of 4 in the summer of 1966. Clearly, my parents were very upset. They thought I'd fallen into a canal, but as it happened, a policewoman found me, and then this teenage girl meant to be looking after me, she spotted me with the policewoman, and she came over and said, "Oh yeah, we've lost him." And I looked at this girl and I said, "I'd never seen this woman in my life before." And so the policewoman had to wait for my parents to turn up. So yeah, I didn't fall into a canal, as you can see, but maybe that left an impression concerning Venice on me, and I certainly can't understand why someone could not just want to go to Venice, but actually to get married in Venice and spend millions and millions of dollars on their wedding. You might say that is the banality of extreme wealth. So the way this video is going to be structured is I'm going to start off with a preview of the week astrologically. Then I'm going to look at Jeff Bezos, and then I'm going to consider the I Ching. So I'll do an I Ching reading for the week. It will have 4 sections: a general section, then money, then career, and then finally relationships. So let's start off by looking at the week ahead. So here's a chart for the week. Don't forget to like and subscribe if appropriate. So you can see that the week starts off with Sun in Cancer, as we know, and the Moon in Virgo. So the Moon is now waxing. We've had the new moon. So the moon is getting larger in the sky, if you haven't got any clouds obscuring the moon. And so generally speaking, it's a fortunate time. And additionally, we are currently at the beginning of a week in a Kala Sapa time. The Kala Sapa is the time of the snake, and it's when all of the planets are on one side of the nodal axis. So you can see here is the North Node in Virgo, South Node in Pisces. Of course, Kalasarpa is a Vedic concept, so maybe we should be seeing those the Kalasarpa in terms of a Vedic signs. Of course, the North Node is in Vedic astrology is in Aries, and is that right? Sorry, in Vedic astrology it's in Aquarius, and the South Node is in Leo. But the Moon is going on to the other side of the nodal axis. So that means we are generally in a time of Kalasarpa, but the Moon, as it goes beyond the nodal axis, is ending the Kalasarpa period. So we've got a couple of weeks where we don't have to worry so much about the time of the snake, and the time of the snake can bring about unexpected events, difficult events, and things may seem incredibly unstable. So, it's possible that over the next fortnight, things do calm down. And looking at what's happening over the course of a week, there aren't any hugely important aspects. So, on Monday, Tuesday, I don't see anything of massive importance. By Wednesday, it is true, though, that the Moon is moving into the Via Combusta. So the Via Combusta, that part of the sky between 15 Leo and 15 Scorpio. And so during that period, things can be sort of up in the air, and things might happen that we weren't expecting. And so it's something that happens every month, so I don't think we need to get too worried about it. Then on Thursday, that's Thursday the 3rd of July, we have Mars making a biquintile to Pluto. So Mars biquintile Pluto is an aspect that is potentially quite useful. It is quite a contrived aspect, but if we make the effort with Mars biquintile Pluto, remember biquintile Mars and Pluto making a 144-degree aspect, 2/5 of a circle, and so with that biquintile, we might want to really make an attempt to assert ourselves, and we have to work it out because it's a biquintile. We have to use our willpower, and through our willpower, and perhaps through our planning as well, we can create real effects. Then on Friday, Friday is actually the busiest day of the week in theory, because we've got three things happening. We've got Venus making a conjunction to Uranus. Remember, Uranus is right at the end of Taurus. So you've got Venus conjunct Uranus, and that can stir things up, and it can make things exciting. And it might say something about relationships. It might say something also about art, because Venus is a planet connected with art, and we might have ideas about what looks beautiful, and we might want to act on those ideas. Is that such a good thing? Well, not necessarily. We might change our mind quickly. That is a thing about Uranus. Uranus can encourage us to have one opinion, then another opinion, and not be especially stable in our views. So with Venus conjunct Uranus, it might not be a good idea, for example, to spend a lot of money on something that seems attractive at the time. And then the moment Venus has made a conjunction to Uranus, it moves into Gemini. So Venus will no longer be in its own sign. So you might say that Venus is weakened by its movement into Gemini, and at the same time, the Gemini season, which seemed to be over, is kind of rekindled to some extent. And so Venus will spend some time in Gemini. I mean, how long? I should have looked that up beforehand. But Venus will be in Gemini throughout July. I think it goes into Cancer on July the 31st. So that does bring a change. And, Venus moving into Gemini does bring some air into the chart. And because before Venus moved into Gemini, there were no planets in Libra, no planets in Gemini. There was only Pluto, a generational planet in Aquarius. So So Venus in Gemini perhaps creates some perspective, perhaps creates some variety. And also on Friday, Neptune goes stationary, and that is an important event. I don't want to say much about it here right now because it needs to be, I need to think about it. But with Neptune going stationary, it might say something about our dreams, about our illusions and our delusions, and we have to really look at exactly where Neptune is. Of course, Neptune is quite close to the Aries point. I mean, it goes stationary at about around 2 degrees 10 Aries, and so there might be second thoughts, or there might be further confusion and fear as well, because Neptune is going stationary pretty close to Saturn. But when I do my reading for Friday, I'll go into detail about what it means for Neptune to be stationary. Then over the weekend, on Saturday and Sunday, we've got some aspects involving Uranus. We've got a decile between Jupiter and Uranus on a Saturday, and we've got a semisextile between the Sun and Uranus on Sunday. So it may be that over the course of a weekend there are things happening, and we might want things to happen. With Jupiter decile Uranus, we want to express ourselves. Everyone wants to express ourselves. Freedom is important, and we might want to create a situation which is transformative, and we might enjoy being something of a revolutionary, not just because Jupiter's decile Uranus, but also we've got Sun semi-square Uranus, and that's an aspect that again, we have to look at the overall chart, we have to look at what else is going on, but I think that Sun semi-square Uranus could be interesting. And yeah, when I look at my forecast, when I do my readings for the weekend, I'll be going into detail about those two aspects involving Uranus. But let me now turn to the horoscope of Jeff Bezos. I do not find Jeff Bezos' chart very interesting, by the way. You've got these sort of billionaires. You've got Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. Of the three, Elon Musk's chart is far and away the most interesting. I don't find Bill Gates' chart particularly interesting either. But at least with Bill Gates and Elon Musk, we've got times of birth. With Jeff Bezos, we don't have a time of birth. We just know he's born, January the 12th, 1964. Nothing more to be said. We don't even know what sign his moon is in, and so you can see that Jeff Bezos has his moon at noon in Albuquerque, New Mexico, at 28 Sagittarius. So his moon might be in Sagittarius, it might be in Capricorn, and yes, he has got his sun in Capricorn. And when you think of the super successful people, well, you might say Capricorn. Capricorn's, from a stereotypically textbook point of view, would be quite into money and success and slowly building things up. And he's also got Venus conjunct Saturn, and so Venus conjunct Saturn in Aquarius. That's quite a strong Saturn. So Saturn was in Aquarius in the early 60s, and it's not retrograde in his chart. It would be particularly powerful if it was a daytime chart, but we don't know what time of day he was born. And so Venus conjunct Saturn, this is someone who has a serious approach, and it is not especially emotional. He, by the way, does not have any personal planets in water signs. Yeah, he's got Neptune in Scorpio, he's got Chiron in Pisces, but none of the personal planets. He hasn't got Jupiter or Saturn in water signs, and so water is not his thing. And so maybe there's a compensation thing about him wanting to get married in Venice. Venice, of course, being a a city which, as I've just said, is just full of water. So perhaps he's attracted to a city like that. And with Venus conjunct Saturn and no water, there is a toughness there, and someone who perhaps doesn't allow emotional considerations to get in the way of whatever is needed. And where I am in the Pacific Northwest, we can see the damage that companies like Amazon have done to the environment. Warehouses, just full of warehouses. Forests get cut down to build warehouses. And Amazon are just responding to a commercial need, aren't they? And if Amazon had never existed, those warehouses, they'd still be there. But nonetheless, one is tempted to see Amazon as a culprit. Those warehouses are seen to service the needs of companies like Amazon. And Jeff Bezos would perhaps argue, well, if he wasn't there, someone else would be doing it. And his company indirectly certainly is causing a lot of damage. I don't even think that Amazon is a particularly useful company. I don't think it makes the world a better place. Anyway, that's just my opinion. But yeah, he doesn't have any water in his chart, and that does suggest that he's someone who does what is necessary. And as far as how he expresses himself, I don't know how he expresses himself really, but he doesn't strike me as being an especially emotional person. And if he tries to get emotional, maybe it's all rather embarrassing because it's not comfortable, it's not natural. So that's something to be said about Jeff Bezos. But still, without the time of birth, it's just so difficult. And we can see his chart in a collective sense. Okay, he was that generation of people, born in the early mid-60s. He had Uranus-Pluto conjunction in Virgo. You could say opposition Chiron. I don't know how important that is. And looking to change things, looking for freedom, looking to be able to do what they like. And that was the vibe in the 60s in a generational sense, but also people born in the 60s would pick up on that and utilize that energy in whatever way they feel fit, if they have the talent and opportunity. And so maybe he's channeling at Uranus and Pluto in terms of whatever he's doing with Amazon, and the fact that he can now do what he likes because he's got the money. And if he wants to spend millions on getting married in Venice, well, he can. And additionally, he probably has Mars in Capricorn, almost certainly has got Mars in Capricorn. You can see his Mars is at 29:38 Capricorn at noon. So Mars was about to move into Aquarius. So maybe if he'd been born right at the end of the day, just before midnight, his Mars would have been in Aquarius. But I think it's likely that he's got his Mars in Capricorn. And so, Mars in Capricorn, okay, it might be in the last degree of Capricorn, but it's still a pretty good sign to have your Mars in. It's exalted in Capricorn, and, it's very focused, and it is kind of close to the Sun, but, it's not that close to the Sun, but having Sun and Mars in a wide conjunction in Capricorn, that does suggest a person who is actually, very, very dynamic. Notice also he's got the South Node in Capricorn. So the business of making money and being successful just comes easy to him. The South Node, the line of least resistance. North Node in Cancer. That's perhaps where he should be going. Cancer is a sort of more nurturing, emotional sign, and it's perhaps a problem, because he doesn't really have any traditional planets in water. So that South Node is having to do a great deal of work. So the woman he's getting married to is Lauren Sanchez. I'm not going to say much about her chart. Again, it's another chart. She's also born in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We don't have a time of birth for her. So again, it's difficult to say very much about it. I mean, she has got some water in her chart. She's got Mars in Pisces, and she's got Jupiter in Scorpio trine Mars, and that is a very sort of active trine to have, especially as she is a Sagittarian with Sagittarian Venus in Sagittarius as well, and she has Earth. She's got Moon in Taurus, Venus, Moon trine Mercury. So the only thing she doesn't have is air, unless you count Uranus in Libra. But we don't have a time of birth, so I don't think I need to say a great deal about her horoscope. I mean, it is all about Jeff Bezos. I mean, Jeff Bezos is the person of interest. And looking at the synastry between the two, if we put Jeff will put Jeff Bezos's chart in the middle and Lauren Sanchez's on the outer wheel. I don't actually see much in the way of connection between their two charts, and maybe it's just relevant that they were both born in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Maybe there's just a similarity of childhood experience, or maybe just something about the birthplace, about the geographical location. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they didn't spend too long in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it's got nothing to do with where they were born. But yeah, I just don't see a huge connection there. Of course, if Bezos was born at noon, he would have his moon at 28 Sagittarius, and Lauren Sanchez has her sun at 27 Sagittarius. So that sun moon connection can be very powerful, and it can be a key deciding factor in terms of bringing people together. So there is a possibility there. But again, I don't really see a huge connection there. I mean, you could say, well, there's his south node in Capricorn. Her moon is potentially trine his south node, but I don't really see it, and I don't really see anything really compelling bringing the charts together. And this is a problem about having two charts, that neither of which have a time of birth. We can nonetheless create a composite chart. So a composite chart is when you take each planet in each chart and you find the midpoint. So if you would take Lauren Sanchez's sun, Bezos's sun, you find the midpoint between the two suns, that's the composite sun, and you just go through the planets like that. And we don't have to worry about the ascendant and the midheaven, simply because neither chart has a time of birth. But here is the composite chart, and the composite chart does tell us something interesting. It's here that we potentially start to see a connection. So in the composite chart, there is a conjunction between Venus and Jupiter. And so Venus and Jupiter in Capricorn, it's a great aspect. It's a great aspect for bringing people together. It's about relationships. It's about being happy. Even though it is in Capricorn, there might be a purpose. But I don't even know in composite charts whether we should really be looking at signs. I think it's more the aspects that matter, and the houses. Well, normally it would be houses, but because we don't have any times of birth, we can't really think about houses and angles. And there's a Uranus-Pluto conjunction, because both of them were born in the 60s. So if you take the midpoint of their Uranuses and the midpoint of their Plutos, you still get the Uranus-Pluto conjunction. And this Uranus-Pluto conjunction does link with their Venus-Jupiter conjunction. So the composite chart, Venus-Jupiter conjunction, trine a Uranus-Mars conjunction, trine a Uranus-Pluto conjunction. That does indicate an excitement. And that's something we didn't see from a connection with the natal charts. So this may be a good reason why, when you're doing synastry, when you're comparing the astrology of two people, that you should look at the composite chart, even though it seems rather illogical. Just why would you take the midpoints of two people's charts and really create something that in some ways is quite fake and contrived, the composite chart, but it does seem to work. And then there's the wedding. And so here is a chart for their marriage in Venice. And I believe they were married at 9:15 p.m. I don't know to what extent this marriage was actually a legal event or whether it was a ceremonial event, but it was certainly a public event. Now, I don't know whether it was exactly at 9:15 p.m., but it was sometime on Friday evening. And so the question is this a good day to get married, or indeed a good time to get married? And that's always something you need to consider, with marriages. Great marriages can take place with terrible astrology, and vice versa. But it's just another thing to consider, like the flowers and everything else that people feel they need to sort out at the time of a wedding. Well, the yacht as well, if you're Jeff Bezos. And one thing about this chart is that the moon is in the 7th. I mean, even if he wasn't born even if a marriage didn't take place exactly at 9:15 p.m., we can say that for sure, that the moon is in the 7th. And of course, the moon in the 7th, that is about the other. It's about relationships, and so that's perhaps fitting. And also, the moon is making a mutual reception with the sun. So the moon is in Leo, a sign ruled by the sun. The sun is in Cancer, a sign ruled by the moon. So the sun and the moon have a very easy relationship to one another. So that's not bad. I mean, that's pretty good as far as marriages are concerned. And there are other things to consider. Venus is in Taurus. Venus is in its own sign in Taurus. If it was at 9:15, Venus would be in the 4th. So there's nothing wrong with Venus's position there, and it's sextile the North Node. So I would not have said that chart is problematic. I would question where exactly this marriage is going. The moon has. It's made a conjunction of Mercury. It is in a reasonably good position because of its mutual reception. I mean, the moon on its own in Leo Leo is not the greatest sign for the moon to be in, by the way, because the moon doesn't have any dignities in the sign of Leo. But it's just because of that mutual reception between the sun that kind of saves it. And so, if you were an astrologer and you had to choose a time to get married, and you had to have the moon in Leo, well, the having a mutual reception is something you would want to go with. So the moon, having made that conjunction to Mercury, what is its next aspect? That's always a thing you have to ask, and particularly its next aspect to a traditional planet. And as far as I can see, the moon's next aspect is a square to Venus, and that square to Venus is not for 15 degrees. So one wonders, them having got married, what next? That's the issue. And so one assumes, Lauren Sanchez being in her 50s and he being his early 60s, it's not like they're a young couple. The next stage might be raising a family. It's not like that. And so, where is it going? And so that could be a problem. But I think overall that mutual reception between the sun and the moon really does make the difference. I mean, I think that I wouldn't have said that was a bad time to get married. Yeah, because of that reception. And finally, what is it? What is this marriage? What was it doing to Jeff Bezos? So here's Jeff Bezos's chart, and the question is, what transits did he have at the time of his marriage? And so we put Jeff Bezos in the middle, and we put his marriage on the outer wheel, and there we have it. And the main thing seems to be Uranus. So Uranus was at 29 Taurus, and so Uranus was simply making a trine to his Mars, and that might be as far as it goes. It was something exciting, and perhaps he enjoyed all the attention, and it was dramatic, and it's just a trine. It's an aspect that it's not going to last very long. Of course, Uranus will go into Gemini, then it will go back. It will make another trine to his Mars, but that's probably the main thing going on. And then you have the composite chart, and whether or not the composite chart was being activated at the time of the wedding, and I would have said yes, it was, because remember, there's a Venus-Mars conjunction in the composite chart between Lauren Sanchez and Jeff Bezos, and it's trine the Uranus-Pluto conjunction, and Venus at the time of the wedding was at 2230 Taurus. So Venus was trining Venus-Jupiter, and it was trining Uranus-Pluto, so it was bringing everything together. And this is a further example of composite charts working. And yeah, it's a composite chart that really shows astrology in action. It wasn't the individual charts of Bezos and his new wife. And I'm afraid I'm not very enthusiastic about the subject of Jeff Bezos and his wedding, but I thought I'd mention it. But yeah, sorry about that lack of enthusiasm. And now I want to look at the I Ching. So in this I Ching reading, I will be looking at the week ahead, week starting on Monday, June the 30th. The reading is optional. In other words, if you've watched this video so far and you don't want your I Ching read, you don't have to have it read. You can just stop watching this video now, because this reading, only applies to people who watch the I Ching section. So if you don't watch a section, it doesn't matter what I say, it's not going to have an impact on you. I mean, it might not have an impact on you anyway. Maybe I flatter myself. I mean, this is just a forecast. I mean, who knows whether the I Ching really works, whether it really does say anything meaningful to the people listening, whether it really does say anything about the future, the near future. I mean, who knows? But it's just something I offer, and I'm always grateful for feedback. So I asked the question, what is the week starting on Monday, June the 30th, 2025, going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And don't forget, this reading has 4 sections. It has a general section, then money, then career, and finally relationships. So the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 7, which is the army. So what I'm doing now is I'm just giving a general view of the I Ching reading for the week, for the hexagrams I got. So the army is a difficult hexagram. Difficult not because it is difficult or problematic, it's because it can be difficult to interpret. The army gives us ideas of military force, people coming together with a common purpose. And, here's you coming to this reading. You want to know about, the week ahead. What's it going to be like? And I'm talking about armies. And I think it's unlikely that an army is going to be, marching through your village or your town. It doesn't seem to be a real possibility. So one has to try to think symbolically about what the army means. And the army can be about being part of something. We are not alone, and if we want to get something done, then we have to cooperate and perhaps accept that other people know best. Because when you're talking about armies, you're talking about hierarchies. You're thinking about people who are above us, who are giving you orders, and maybe we're giving orders to people below us. And so if we want to get something done, if we want to make progress this week, then in most cases, we should try to do it with other people. Now, if we are on our own, then we have to think about it in a different way. The army might be about mustering our resources and taking everything we've got. We've got a situation, we want to triumph, so we need to bring everything together. And of course, we should be trying our hardest to get our social resources together, people we know, people who can help us. So try not to do things on your own, ideally. Now, as far as what happens, well, there is an indication here of some success. So if you are up against a rival or it's a competitive situation, then you may be successful. Or if you feel this week that there's a threat, then you may be able to confront this threat and actually defeat it, perhaps. But you mustn't go too far, because what we have here is the fifth line moves. And the fifth line has a warning. I mean, its warning is actually quite sort of militaristic. It warns against going berserk, perhaps overcoming the enemy and just there being a general slaughter. And you don't want a general slaughter. When you've reached a point of success, when you feel that you've done enough to meet the threat, whatever that threat might be, that's enough. You've done the job. If you go further, if you move from the defense to the attack, when you're really starting to gain new territory, that may be where the problem lies. So do consider what you're trying to achieve, and remember, this is a defensive move. And if you go too much on the attack, well, things could go wrong. And because the fifth line moves, we do have a second hexagram, and the hexagram we move to is hexagram number 29, which is the abysmal. And this really is warning us about some danger. Probably a danger that we might be facing later in the week. And the abysmal is, of course, talking about the abyss. I mean, you look at these two trigrams. It's a double trigram. It's a repeated trigram, and this trigram represents the abyss. It's the aspect of water which is the bottomless ocean. And maybe this links to the fact that Neptune is going to go retrograde this week. And so be careful. Now, this does not mean to say that you are going to fall into the abyss, because the indication is that you're going to be in a situation where you're dealing with dangers that you know and you understand. You know what needs to be done. And it's not about forcing things. And, this goes back to what I was saying, is it should not be about general slaughter. At least that's how the I Ching says it. Seeing things in terms of some war between warlords in ancient China. Of course, in a modern sense, you're not trying to completely overwhelm other people, overwhelm the competition. And because if you do, there could be dangers, and this is where the dangers are, showing you the abysmal. Yeah, things could go wrong, but as you're dealing with issues that you know and understand, then I think it's very likely that you'll be okay, that you'll make the right moves. So let me now look at things from the viewpoint of money. So when it comes to money, there may be things to think about. The financial situation, if money is important to you, it may not be straightforward, and it may be a situation where you feel that you do need some help, and if you're trying to work something out financially on your own, it might be hard work, and you might not understand everything. However clever you think you are, however clever you actually are, you could always do with some extra help. And so that might be what the army is about. Perhaps consulting professionals or friends who know what they're talking about, people who are sort of unbiased but are still looking after your own interests. So if you are dealing with a complex financial issue, you shouldn't feel that you're having to do it all on your own. And if you're trying to raise money or make more money, then it may be that a collective action is the best approach. Perhaps you and other people who've got the same financial goals can come together and cooperate. And it does seem that you will have a degree of success. Perhaps there is a problem that can be addressed, but you don't want to take things too far. You certainly don't want to be greedy, because of this fifth line moving. The fifth line suggests that, there can be an opportunity to make money, or perhaps even to get the better of another person financially. Perhaps if there are any sort of negotiations or wheeling and dealing, you may have a chance to get a favourable deal for yourself. But you absolutely mustn't push it. If you push your advantage too far, then it could all turn against you. And so this takes us to the second hexagram, which is to hexagram number 29, which is the abysmal, talking about the pit. And of course, if you fall into the pit, that suggests financial loss. And it does indicate that by the end of the week, you maybe feel that financially things are a bit touch and go. And if you were to make mistakes, the consequences could be very serious. But I don't think you will make mistakes, because I think you know what you're dealing with. You've dealt with it before. And so I think that you should be fine. Then there is career. And it's a fairly similar picture to what I was talking about with money, with career. I don't know whether career is relevant to you. Business, career, perhaps looking for a job. With the army, this really is indicating that you should not be doing things on your own. You might think you can handle things on your own, but I'm not sure that is necessarily the case. The army is about being with a group, cooperating with the group. So if you're at work, it's not a solo enterprise. Your workmates have things to say. You can cooperate with them, and of course, if you're an employee, you are part of a hierarchy, like it or not. There are people above you. There are people employing you. There may be people below you, but you have to use that hierarchy and respect your role. You've got something to say, but you haven't got a huge amount to say, because you have to understand your station, whatever that station might be. And collective action is likely to be more effective than solo action. And so if you have any grievances relating to your work, then don't try to deal with the whole thing on your own. And if your work involves, for example, unions, if you're a member of a trade union, then that kind of collective action and collective support really could matter. So, if you have a problem at work, or if you have a grievance, then, rather than just take on that grievance on your own, see what support is available, because that's the nature of the army. If, on the other hand, you are running a business, it's your business, and you're trying to look after your own interests, then again, don't feel that you're on your own. See where you can get help, and regardless of your situation, the action should be defensive. It may be at a certain stage you realize that there is a particular problem which could be jeopardizing your position, it could be jeopardizing your business, and your job is to deal with that problem and to confront that problem, and to act defensively. And the I Ching does suggest that you can do it, that you can really make some progress, but you don't want to take things too far. Just remember that with the fifth line moving, the I Ching does talk about not slaughtering your enemy, knowing when to stop. And so you're not trying to humiliate anyone, you're not trying to move into new territory, you're just trying to defend what you've got. And if you know your limits, then you should be okay. But still, with the fifth line moving, it does give us a new hexagram, and it moves to hexagram number 29, which is the abysmal. So there is a warning there, and perhaps by the end of a week, maybe when Neptune starts to go retrograde, because it's stationary direct, very soon. I think that's on Friday. Neptune goes stationary direct. So there could be moments where things are dangerous, when you have to be very careful about dealing with other people, dealing with your employer or your employee or your workmates, or if you're looking for new business, how you're trying to get this new business, how you feel you might not get paid for something. So it's a dangerous situation, but it's a situation that you understand. You've seen it before, and because you've seen it before, you'll know how to act. So I do think that in the end, from a career business perspective, things should be okay, provided you're careful. And finally, there is relationships, and we have this hexagram, the army, and it's kind of difficult to see the army with relationships. How does that actually work? And the army does indicate that there is a threat. You don't have an army just for the sake of it. And perhaps you need to think about your various relationships, not just sort of the important permanent relationships, but all the various relationships you're in. And it's maybe a situation where not all of them are doing you any good. And sometimes there are people who you find it difficult to deal with. Maybe they're in a stronger position than you, and you don't quite know how to respond. And you might feel you're on your own. I mean, that's part of what a relationship is. It's, you and another person. It's not about the group. Yet the army actually is a hexagram about the group. And so if you are having relationship issues, whatever they might be, don't feel that you have to deal with it all on your own. Get help, get advice, talk to another person, talk to other people. So you can't necessarily work things out on your own. And so that might be one way in which this hexagram is working out, because it is quite a defensive hexagram. And so do think about how you are being treated. And if it's a pattern where you have not been treated well over a long period of time, then this might be the time to get assistance. You are not on your own. And I think that is the message of the army. And you should not, underestimate yourself as well. So you might think that you are in a weak position vis-a-vis another person, but I don't actually think you are. And that relates perhaps to the fifth line. The fifth line does indicate that the other person, if that other person is a problem, I really don't want to create issues where there are no issues. But if you are dealing with a problem person, then you can turn the tables. That seems very likely with that fifth line. And the power could suddenly shift very much in your favor. And the question is, once you are in a position of power, what do you do? And the warning here with the fifth line is you don't take things too far. Your job is to protect your own interests. It's not to wipe out the other person, to sort of blow them out of the water. That's not what it's about. It's just about self-protection, and you do what is needed to protect yourself and to protect your interests and your autonomy, and that is enough. And then fifth line moves, we move to a second hexagram, and we move to hexagram number 29, which is the abysmal. And that does indicate, though, that relationships, whatever's going on, they are dangerous. Every relationship has its dangers, and these dangers could, in an extreme situation, be about you falling into the pit, the abysmal. If you make a mistake, if you're careless, if you underestimate someone, or if you push things too far yourself. Don't forget, you yourself can overdo it, but provided you stick to the straight and narrow, and you weave a path through the pits, so that there might be a pit to your left, pit to your right, but provided you don't move, provided you stay on that path, and you allow things to develop in a natural way. And the I Ching does say with the abysmal, it's a lot to do with water, and water is just following the path set for it by gravity. And so if you go with the natural flow, but always looking after your own interests, then relationships should be an area of your life which is okay. And don't forget that this is just a reading for 1 week. It's not talking about the rest of the year, and next week will be different. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again very soon.